All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to unpack the incredibly powerful and frankly terrifying warnings in the ancient book of Jeremiah, specifically chapters 4 through 6.
So this really gets to the heart of the problem Jeremiah was facing, right? I mean, how on earth do you deliver a message of impending doom to a people who have just completely tuned you out?
You see, the warning doesn't start with some abstract theological argument. Nope. It starts with something tangible and absolutely terrifying. Jeremiah paints this picture of a relentless, unstoppable military force sweeping down from the north, and it's heading straight for them.
And to really ramp up that sense of dread, he describes this enemy in these really mysterious terms. They're not just some other army. They are an ancient, powerful force, so foreign you can't even understand their language. The message is crystal clear. You are totally and completely outmatched. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. This invasion, it's not just random bad luck. There's a direct cause and effect relationship here. As the prophets would put it, they've been sowing the wind and now, well, they're about to reap the whirlwind.
And if you want to understand the core of the problem, it all comes down to this one Hebrew word, shub. It means to turn, to return, or to repent. This word really represents God's repeated, almost desperate plea for the people to simply turn back.
And look at this. It lays out the conflict so clearly. On one side, you've got God's genuine offer. Hey, just turn back and we can stop all this. But on the other side, Judah's response is just a flat-out no. Every single call is met with these hardened hearts.
I mean, the text uses this incredible image. It says they have made their faces harder than rock. Think about that. This isn't just ignoring someone. It's an active, stubborn resistance. Their faces were literally set like stone against any kind of correction.
So you might be wondering, how did these warnings actually get delivered? It wasn't just some guy on a street corner shouting randomly. Nope. The prophets used a very specific and very powerful rhetorical structure. It's basically a two-step formula, what scholars call a prophetic judgment speech. And it's super logical. Step 1, lay out the accusation. The crime. Step 2, announce the punishment. So, to build their case, the prophets would just stack up these accusations, often starting with the word woe, which, by the way, is like a formal curse or a death sentence. They'd start with real tangible crimes, like the rich gobbling up all the land and leaving nothing for the poor. And then they'd add more. Accusations of just wild hedonism, a culture that's totally consumed by partying and drinking, completely ignoring what God is even doing in the world around them. And finally, they hit the deepest level, accusations of complete moral and spiritual rot. They've turned everything upside down, calling evil good and good evil. It's a total inversion of right and wrong.
So after stacking up all this evidence, accusation after accusation, the prophet uses this one single, chilling word to pivot. Therefore, this is it. This is the moment the hammer falls, shifting from the crime to the unavoidable consequence.
And that's the key, right? The punishment directly answers the crime. Because you did all these things, therefore, judgment is coming. And it's coming in the form of that terrifying, unstoppable army we talked about. But Jeremiah wasn't just some lawyer reading an indictment. No way. He was a poet of doom. He painted these incredibly vivid, terrifying pictures to make sure the people could feel the horror of what was coming. He unleashes this whole series of metaphors to describe the enemy. He calls them a ravaging predator, like a lion, a wolf, and a leopard all let loose in your city. A destructive wind, an overwhelming army whose quivers are like open tombs. The imagery is just relentless. But out of all of them, this might be the most shocking image of all. Jeremiah actually borrows the language directly from Genesis 1, from the creation story itself, to describe a world being uncreated. The invasion will be so total, it's like hitting the reset button on creation and sending the land back into a state of formless chaos. And that's when you realize the bigger picture here. This isn't just about Babylon or some other army. This attacker is actually a manifestation of God's own judgment in this cosmic event the prophets called the Day of the Lord.
And here's the crazy irony. The people were actually looking forward to the day of the Lord. They thought it was a day when God would show up and fight for them and crush all their enemies. But the prophets just flipped that expectation completely on its head. They warn, no, because of what you've done, God is coming to fight against you.
And at this point, for Judah, there was really only one outcome left. There was no escape.
The prophet Amos put it perfectly. He said, "The day of the Lord is like running from a lion, only to run smack into a bear. And if you somehow get away from the bear and make it into your house, a snake bites you." The point is, judgment was coming. It was unavoidable.
So you see, these historical judgments in the Bible, they act as a kind of pattern or a foreshadowing of a final day of the Lord. They're a reminder, and it leads to this profound question from the New Testament. Since all these things are to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be? It's a call to live with a real sense of purpose and awareness.
And that's really what this all leaves us with, isn't it? It's a provocative thought. The principles we see here, of cause and effect, of sowing and reaping, of a final accounting, are presented as timeless truths. So if these ancient warnings of judgment really do echo through time, what are they asking of us, right here, right now?